Okay, so now we're moving into fractions and decimals. We learned about fractions and how to read fractions, how to change fractions, mix numbers, and now we're going to apply that to doing decimals. First thing I want to do is kind of get an idea of what fractions and decimals look like. We've been exposed to fractions. I know a lot of you have seen decimals before in your lifetime, so let's just put them into place. Okay? What would this be, a fraction or a decimal? Good, decimal. What about this one? Decimal. This one looks familiar. What's this one? Fraction. And this? Fraction. 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 Decimal. And decimal. So before we get started on learning about all this new stuff, let's take a look at the Brainpop video I found.
$39 83/100. Dear Tim and Moby, can you make a movie about decimals? From Veronica. Sure can. Basically, a decimal is a number that's based on the number 10. Actually, all of our numbers are decimals because our number system is based on 10. Even the word decimal comes from the Latin word for 10, decim. But usually, when people talk about decimals, they're talking about numbers that are only parts of a whole. Imagine you've got a rectangle that represents one whole object. If you divide it into 10 smaller equal-sized rectangles, you now have 10 parts of one, tenths. If you divide each of those into 10 smaller rectangles, you have 10 times 10, or 100 parts of one, hundredths. Now, if you divide each of those into 10 smaller rectangles, you have 10 times 100, or 1,000 parts of one, thousandths. All of these fractions, tenths, hundredths, and thousandths, are called decimal units. Well, writing decimals is pretty easy. In our number system, I can count from 0 to 9 in the units place. To count bigger numbers, I have to move left, over to the tens place. Each place increases by a power of 10. Because decimal units are smaller than 1 unit, you actually move to the right of the units place. To do that, you need this guy, the decimal point. Numbers to the left of the decimal point are whole numbers, and numbers to the right are decimals. Except for the units, every place on the left side has a decimal equivalent on the right. Tens and tenths, hundreds and hundredths, thousands and thousandths. So this number is 39 83/100. Actually, decimals are really important. We use them every day to talk about money. Right, 1 cent is just 1/100th of a dollar. We can also use decimals for weight, measuring distances, baseball statistics, temperatures, and even stock prices. You need more reasons? Well, arithmetic is a lot easier with decimals than it is with fractions. As long as you line the decimal points up, you can add or subtract them just like whole numbers. Also, decimal numbers are easy to compare. By adding zeros to the right of the shorter number to make the numbers the same length, you can tell right away which one is bigger. Well, 0 is just a placeholder. Adding numbers to the right of a decimal number doesn't change the value of the number. Some decimals do go on adding numbers to the right forever. For example, the decimal equivalent of the fraction 1/3 starts out as 0.333 and just keeps going on and on. These decimals are called repeating decimals. You could round that number off to 3/10, or 33/100, but it's more accurate to put a line over the last number. That line indicates that the number keeps on going. Decimals that end are called terminating decimals. But some decimals, called irrational numbers, don't end or repeat. One example is pi, which is the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its diameter. Pi starts off 3.14159, and then it keeps going for so long that scientists have found millions of its decimals without any repeating pattern. Convinced yet? 1/100th of a second faster than Rita. See? Decimals matter.
Okay. There's one more I wanted to watch and put on here so that you guys can watch also from home in case you. Let's see. Alright, let's find that one again.
That's a lot of pizza. Are we having a party or something? Dear Tim and Moby, can you help me with changing fractions into decimals? From Samantha. Hey, what fantastic luck. That's just what I'm doing. Perhaps Moby's pizza can help. This large pizza is cut into 10 slices. It's one whole pie or 10/10 pieces. Fractions indicate division. In this case, we know that a whole pizza has 10 slices. And so far, there are 10 pieces still here. So 10 divided by 10 equals the whole number 1. Moby's apparently really hungry, and we're left with 8 out of 10 pieces. That's 8/10 of the pizza. Now the key thing to know here is the decimal places. It's easy to see where the tenths position is, and all we have to do is slip our 8 in there. So 8/10 in decimal form is 0.8. This method works for all fractions that have a 10, 100, 1000, or some other multiple of 10 in their denominator. Right, what about other fractions like, I don't know. This small pizza, as you can see, has been cut into 6 pieces. Okay, now we have 5/6 of a pizza. To write 5/6 as a decimal, we need to calculate 5 divided by 6. You can calculate it out using long division, or with a calculator if you have one available. That's 0.833333333, and so on. When a decimal repeats a number like that, it's called a repeating decimal. We can round it off at the hundredths place if we like, and say that 5/6 is about 0.83, or 83 hundredths. And that's how you convert fractions to decimals. Oh, what, do you want to convert back to fractions? Well, that's easy. Let's take that 0.83. As I said before, it's also called 83 hundredths. We know that because the last digit is in the hundredths place. To convert back to a fraction, place the numbers after the decimal point over the whole number value of the last digit's place. So, for instance here, since it's 83 hundredths, we'll make it 83 over 100. If you had a number like 0.754 or 754 thousandths, you'd put 754 over 1000. If you can simplify, you probably should. Let's see, divide top and bottom by 2, that makes 377 500ths. And that's how you convert fractions to decimals. So, you gonna eat all this pizza? Are you sure? Because there's a lot here, more than you could possibly eat, unless you want to make yourself sick. There's no way you could safely eat it all. I could help you, help you eat this pizza, if you want.
There's also, if you Google Brainpop Games, it'll allow you to do the number line games for decimals. So if those of you who have internet at home can do that, you don't have to have a Brainpop account in order to do that. Okay, so let's move on. Alright, so there's different ways that you can represent decimals. You can do that by using base 10 blocks. So we have, if we did this as a base 10 block, this would be a 1 or an 100, okay, or a whole candy bar in this case. Alright, then we can bring it down and we can separate it into tenths. In this case, in this case, this would be our 1 whole. If this one we separated into tenths, okay? If we did fractions like we're used to, this would be tenths, right? Or we'll say 1 over tenth if we're pointing to this one right here, okay? So if I have one of these shaded in as a fraction, it would look like 1/10, okay? As a decimal, it'd be the same thing. It'd be 0.1 tenth, because in place value, this is a tenth. Right here, if I did one of these squares as a fraction, it'd be 1/100th, right? Because there's 100 little squares in a base 10 block. As a decimal, it would look like this. Okay, this being the tens place, this being the hundreds place. All right, you can also think of it as dollars. A lot of you like money, so you'll understand this. All right, so a dollar would be 1 whole, right? Or 100. We'll just leave it as a whole. Okay, so that would be our whole. How many dimes are in a dollar? Good, 10. Okay, so if I was to separate that 1 whole dollar in a box into tens, I would have 10 cents each. Again, 1 dime would equal 1/10, or 10 hundredths, which would also be 10 cents. Okay. Pennies. How many pennies are in a dollar? 100. Okay, would be represented. 1 penny would be represented as 100th, or 0.01, or 1 cent. Okay, don't have to worry too much about knowing your dollars and cents, even though you learned that in like first grade. All right, also you can look at it as a number line. I know we all love our number lines, so let's go over again how to do a number line. If I'm looking at this number line, I've got 0 over here, and I've got 1 here. And I'm going to draw a line roughly in the middle, which is going to be my half, right? But if I'm thinking in dollars, it could also be my 50%. Okay, so I'm going to do my fractions up here, so it's going to be 1/2 right there in the middle. Okay, if I was to draw lines evenly between 0 and 1, let's say 1 would represent a 10. Okay, I would draw like 5 lines here and 5 lines there. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and another here. All right. So looking at that, I could place decimals on a number line. My half, if I was looking at tens, let's pretend I'll write a 10 over here, okay? This would be a 5. If I was dealing in tens, it'd be a 0.5. My half is 0.5. Could also write it as 5/10. The same thing as 1/2, right? They're equivalent fractions. Right, so if I did that, then this would be, if I'm counting, this would be 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, and 1. Okay? Is that making sense to you? So if I asked you to plot on a number line where 7/10 would be, you would say it'd be right here. Even if you had a blank number line, with all you had is a 1 here, a 0 here, and like a midway point right there, you can still say 7/10 would be roughly in this area, right? Just like you could say 4/10 would probably be right here. Half is going to be right here. All right, so taking a look at some of these, let's look at this and see if we can figure out what our fraction and our decimal would be. I've got how many equal pieces? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 equal pieces. And I've got 3 of them shaded. Okay, so I have 3 shaded 10 equal pieces. Okay, I could also write this as a decimal of 0.3, right? Because if I know my place value house, and let's get a blank page here so I can show you your place value house. Where are we at? We are here. Let's insert blank page. All right, place value house for decimals. I'm going to draw my first place value house here. These are my ones house, right? Okay, so this is my ones house. And then I have ones, tens, 100s. Okay, then I have other house right here with 3 more rooms as well. And here I'm going to have tenths, hundreds, and thousands. I know it might be hard to hear me, but there is a TH at the end of these. Okay? Tenths, hundreds, thousands. So if I have 3 tenths as a fraction, I know I'm going to have a 0 in my ones because I don't have a 1 here. It's not a mixed number. And then I'm going to have 3 in my tenths house. Make sense? Alright, here's another one. Broke it up into 10 equal pieces. So I know my fraction is going to have a tenths. And how many pieces do I have shaded? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tenths. Okay, so my fraction would then be 0.8. Because in my house, I'm in my tenths. Okay, here's another one. Now we've got not just 10 pieces, but we have 100, right? If I counted them here, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 times 10 is 100, so I know 100 pieces go in here. But you already know that because you know your base 10 blocks. So I have 100 as part of my fraction. Okay, my shaded pieces, I have 1 tenth, 2 tenths, and then 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I have 10 here, 20, and 25. Okay, so I have 25 over 100 shaded. My decimal would look like this. Okay, here's my house, my room. Okay, I have a 2 in my tens place and a 5 in my hundreds place. Okay. Let's try another one. Okay, here I got tenths again. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shaded. Okay, that's what my fraction would be. And then I would put a 5 in my tenths room of my house because I have 5 tenths. Okay, here's 100s. I have 1 shaded in. Okay, putting it in my house. I have 100. Okay, so my fraction would look like that. Okay, it doesn't go here in this house because I am looking at, try to turn that green. I'm looking at 100s here. So this 1 is going to go into my hundreds room. All right, here's another one for you. I have all but 1 shaded. I'm working on 100 here. So if I have all of them but 1 shaded, I could take 100 minus 1 and figure I have 99 hundredths. My decimal is going to look like this. Okay, I have 9 in my tens and 9 in my hundreds. All right, so looking at your homework, let's do a couple together. I think you'll find it's pretty easy. I'll do number 2 and number 4 for you. My base 10 block is in 10 strips, so I know that I'm looking at tens. And I'm going to write the decimal and the fraction. My fraction then is going to be over 10. And it looks like I have 9 of them shaded, so it would be 9 tenths. I know by looking at my decimal house that the 9 tenths is going to go right next to the decimal, to the right of the decimal. So my decimal would then look like 0.90. Number 4, I know this is broken up into hundreds. Okay, and it looks like I have, let's see, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 75 hundredths. Okay, my decimal is going to look like this. I know my 7 is in my tens place, my 5 is in my hundredths place. Okay, write each fraction as a decimal. I'm going to do the 2 for you, the number 6 I mean, the 200ths. Okay. It's going to look like this, right? Oops. Okay, if I did my house, it's going to go into my hundreds room. So it's going to be 0.02. Let me write that better for you. 0.02. Okay, because if I have my house, those are my rooms. Write the amount as a fraction of a dollar, as a decimal, and as a money amount. Okay, so if I have 2 nickels and 7 pennies, 2 nickels and 7 pennies, my fraction of a dollar is going to be, let's see, each nickel is worth 5 cents. So now I have 10 cents, which is 1/10 of a dollar, and then 7 pennies. So 10 plus 7 is 17. Okay, so 17 of a dollar, or 17 over 100. It's also going to look like 0.17, which is also going to be 17 cents. Sorry, out of space. Okay, 8 dimes and 12 pennies. I know I've got 80 cents. And then I've got 12 pennies, which will give me up to 92 cents, because 80 plus 12 is 92. Okay, so I have 92 over a dollar, which would be my fraction. 0.92 would be my decimal, because I'm going to put my 92 into its proper rooms of the house. And then it'd be 92 cents. Okay, finding the missing numbers. We got 6/10 plus blank hundredths is 66. Okay, so let's take a look here. I've got 6/10, which they told me about already here. And then I've got 600. Okay, I'll leave number 13 for you guys to answer because that's pretty easy. Write 5 cents in decimal form. 5 cents again is 5 pennies over a dollar. Okay, so it's going to be, I'll help you out with that one. So I'll give you the fraction, you write the decimal. Okay, so 5 cents is going to be 5 pennies over a dollar, which would be 5 over a dollar. Okay, you write the decimal form with that one. Write 1 and 34 hundredths in decimal form. So 1 and 34 hundredths. Oh, that's not right. Write 1 and 34 hundredths in decimal form. Okay, so they're giving you the word form of that. So now you got to turn that and write it in decimal form. I would say that's 1 and 34 hundredths, which it shouldn't be introducing you to that yet because we haven't learned mixed numbers, but that's what Miss Fernley would believe that that's the answer. And checking in the book, that's correct. So I've got 1 whole and then 34 hundredths. Okay. Which decimal is shown by the model? You can figure that out. Number 18, you can figure that one out. WSQ, write a paragraph explaining what you learned and finish the practice book page. Okay, you guys have a good night.